How's the coffee? Do you like the coffee?
I do like the coffee. I have a confession, though. This week I had an Americano. Actually, it was on my fabulous road trip from Arizona back to Iowa. And I don't know if I can go back. I mean, it's at the top now. Have you ever had Americano?
I have no idea what's in that. No.
I think it's like a espresso, and then it's got like, you add like the...
By the way, it's espresso.
Espresso.
There's no X in it. Just we want our.
That's just one of many things that you're going to discover. I sing the wrong lyrics to every song also. Anyway, so the espresso, and then you add hot water to it, I think. And I don't know, like I'm really struggling with regular coffee now.
That's all it is espresso and hot water?
I think so. I Googled it very briefly.
All that is diluted strong coffee.
I know, but I can't even tell you how smooth it is. And so I've been drinking the normal stuff, even the good stuff you make, and
it's not the same.
It's not the same.
Well, I understand that. I like to become a connoisseur of things, and the way you become a connoisseur is you try lots of different things.
Right.
Go through phases, or it's your Americano phase. Later, you'll discover espresso that you like.
I might invest. I might invent espresso just to mess with everyone.
As if nobody started that as a brand of beans.
Right.
That would be hilarious.
Yes. Espresso beans.
Right, from flyover country where nobody knows how to say anything,
It's an Iowa thing.
Folgers espresso.
I agree. So I have a challenge then. I think that at some point in the next week I need you to go get one, an Americano.
Okay, I can do that.
And I want to get feedback on what you think.
Is it low carb?
I have no idea.
I bet it is.
Well, it's just black coffee.
Is it gluten-free?
It's got to be.
I hope so.
Yes.
Fair trade?
That I have no idea. Depends on where you get it from.
That's right. Do you know anything about the pedigree of the bean?
Yeah, nothing.
No, I'm going to stop. So what are we going to do? We're going to talk about, we were just chatting about the idea of loneliness. Mm-hmm. When you look out over society, you can identify that there is dysfunction. And then you can see that from any number of perspectives. Well, you can say, well, there's dysfunction because of the epidemic of depression and anxiety. And that's sort of the biological, psychiatric perspective or whatever. And then you can take the psychological. Well, it's the fragmentation of the American family, and it's then there's like sort of the pop culture view. It's technology and the 24-hour news cycle. I mean, there's all these kind of things that we point to as the culprit for the things we believe are wrong. But one thing I know is that even with all of the human contact that we have at our disposal, in the form of the internet and social media and all that, and even working in busy cities where we're surrounded all over the place with people, there's clearly an epidemic of loneliness. Mm-hmm. People are desperate for genuine, meaningful human contact and don't know where to find it or how to do it if they do.
What I see is that people they're not at the root of the problem. So they're at the surface level looking at all those different things and thinking, I've got the magic bullet. If we just had gun control, if we just had, these things that would fix the problem. But the thing is I don't think the problem has been properly diagnosed. And I think and we're trying to solve it at that surface level, and we're trying to solve it linearly. And it's such it's a holistic approach that needs to be taken to it. And I think at the very core, one of the biggest things you're going to find in all these scenarios is this loneliness piece.
What makes you think that is the case? What do you see as you observe the fruited plain that clinches that for you? Is it personal experience? Is it your friends? Is it the TV? What is it?
It's all of the above. Most of us travel through this world and we view it through our lens of what we've been through. And I think that in order to avoid loneliness, you need deep connection. You need wholehearted connection. And for whatever reason, I was thinking about this the other day, like looking back in the generations, like where did we ever have it? Or where did we lose it? And I think it's so complicated, and so it was probably not a solid foundation to start with, and then you throw the internet on there, and that big piece, the internet and social media, to me just blew up. It was a brewing problem. We didn't talk about feelings growing up. We don't know how to handle feelings.
And let me ask you, what is a relationship that is deeply satisfying? What is the cure for loneliness? What does that look like? You mentioned connection. What do we want? What's the ideal?
I think that the ideal is it's wholehearted connection. So it's being able to show up fully as yourself, not faking anything, and being real and being honest. But I think we're missing a language that allows us to really talk about our feelings. It's like we're percolating at this high level with all this external stimulation, and we can't stop. You have to be very still and remove all of that to even start to even peel away and figure out what are the feelings that I'm having. So if you have all these relationships where people are connecting at this high level, and they're not really deep, there's a loneliness there. There has to be. I want people to see me. I want people to see my heart. I want people to truly know me, and you don't feel known when you're percolating at that. So how can you not be lonely?
Why does that create loneliness? You said it's because you can't be seen.
I think it's our deepest desire to be known. And I think that without feeling known by somebody, it just leaves a gap.
And to be known, you need to be able to express yourself, express your desires, your thoughts, your dreams, and feel safe doing so. If you encounter disagreement or something that goes against the status quo, that you wouldn't necessarily be rejected by that person.
Right. It's all of it. Because if you can't say how you honestly feel about something, a situation, your only other option is to stuff it. And then a little piece of you dies. Because we aren't equipped, in my mind, to really deal with conflict. I'm thinking about the school shootings again. All these kids they're going into the school with guns, and they're trying to express these emotions they've got inside of them. And there's anger and there's rage. And the longer that stuff gets built up, the worse the bomb is when it finally goes off. And I just for my kids and for all the kids out there, I desire for them to understand how to talk about their feelings and even get in touch with them so that they can actually have healthy ways of dealing with it. And we're so busy. Who has time to deal with feelings? My gosh, we've got to go to soccer. We've got to go to baseball. We've got to be doing our AP classes. I mean, there's this pressure that just keeps building of the expectations of these kids. And this constant doing, to me, creates this huge imposter syndrome. What if we dropped all that and just let it fall to the ground? Who are we left with? I don't think people know.
Here's a theory on how the loneliness then develops. All my life is about getting somewhere. Completion of school so I could get a job and a salary, and then the partner and the vacation home and all that it's a destination. And so then everything in your environment, people become either a help or a hindrance to my desires for myself, instead of seeing you as a person with a unique set of feelings, hopes, desires, dreams, loves, whatever. You are either there to help me or get in my way. Knowing you is beside the point. I don't need to know you. I just need to know who you know. Right?
And how does it help me?
It's such a
self-serving, selfish,
This is what's called the rat race, where everybody's on this mission. It's a competition. We're trying to get somewhere, and some people eventually, most people, that's a good portion of what I do is talk to people who have burnt out along the way,
right,
at some point, and they're coming into me, and these are sometimes highly accomplished, professional, wealthy. They're saying, I'm lonely. I don't have any real friends.
Right.
I don't know who I can really trust or what I even want anymore. I don't know the person I'm married to. I feel disconnected from my children. I hear this all the time, and people like that will even say to me sometimes, "You're the only person I tell these things
to." Me too. I hear it too.
And I'm like, whoa, I don't want that to be the case for you.
It's so sad that it has to get to that point where everything falls apart and you're just exhausted and worn out and done. And then you got to figure out what to do with the second half of your life. How would you rehabilitate somebody to live the second half of their life then in a different way so that they can get whole again? And I look at the generation coming behind and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's going to be this times 100 for them because they didn't even have the connectedness of meals around the table necessarily and, all those things. So it's like I get so scared when I think about, I know I didn't feel equipped for it, but I can't imagine how ill-equipped maybe this next generation is just because of, not because of them as people, but because they haven't been given the tools.
Rehabilitating somebody, first of all, it's easy when they're ready, I guess, is what I might say. And the shame of it, or maybe just the inevitability, is that there is a degree of suffering often that must first happen before people become awake or begin. It is a lot like becoming awake, where you can imagine your first half of life spent asleep in this dream, like the Matrix or something, where you're plugged into this alternate reality, and then something comes along and shakes you so hard. You've been sleeping through the alarm for years. The alarms have been, blaring. You're not happy.
Yes.
This isn't what you want. None of this is working. And finally, the house of cards comes down, and you're jostled to awareness. And at first, you're bleary eyed. You're like, what? Where am I? I don't. None of this makes any sense. And then it is like I'm still where I've always been. Surrounded by the same people, the same environment potentially, but now I'm seeing it through this entirely different lens. I now begin to discover myself. I begin to see reality from a different perspective. I see my needs differently, and I begin to shape my life towards a completely different orienting principle. That's really what happens. Is in the first half or pre-crisis, you are self-centered primarily. And then you become others-centered.
Yeah.
That's the major shift.
Right.
And as for the kids, it is concerning. I don't know exactly what to do about it. Even with my own kids, I know that they're on the screens a lot. And we do family meals for sure. And we sit down and we always try to engage and have conversation topics that we think are age appropriate and promote vulnerability in expression and that sort of thing. It's fascinating for me to watch the adolescent process where there's this kind of innocent connection with a young child that gradually morphs into this withdrawn teenage state and just there's just no stopping that process. That I don't know how to intervene there, and if it's even necessarily a bad thing. But you can kind of see falling asleep. Now I'm a slave to school and friends and teachers and expectations and all this, and that's hard to watch.
I'm going to knock on wood here, but my kids are just about 17. My son will be 17. My daughter's 15, and I haven't had to endure that painful phenomenon of them completely withdrawing. And the more lonely they feel in the relationship they have with me and my husband as parents, the more likely they are to withdraw. And so I think that parents need new languages and we're constantly talking about feelings and talking about, that kind of stuff at our house, but I'm trained in it, so it's like it's a more natural thing in our household. And I would challenge you that, we don't have to just assume that that's the way it's going to be, like choose something different, figure out a different way to make that kind of happen. And so even if there's the loneliness in the peer groups and the social media side of things, we have this huge opportunity in our homes to give them something different, to give them an authentic connection and be real, and to really give them as much as we can of a language to talk about their feelings and to tap into them and
amen. And I want that, and it's complicated because you have blended families and step families and step kids, and in my case, I don't have a relationship that started at birth with two of the children living in my household, which is. And now with my own biological children, they're not with me all the time, for instance. And So there's barriers that many people face to those connected relationships. And of course, if you aren't trained in it and you don't know
can't
anything,
imagine trying to do it when you don't have the, and I want to challenge parents, because I've heard my friends say, well, I fully expect them to not talk to me, like they're just waiting for it to happen. And then, yep, that happened and that came true. And it's like, I don't want people to just be satisfied with that and say it's just the way it's supposed to be. We always have a choice. We can always do things to make it different. So what do we need to do as parents to create an environment that's different than that? And it doesn't mean it's a surefire thing. I mean, it's so painful. I have friends going through horrible things where the children, they have been engaged and the kids do check out. But at least you look back. I always think I just want to look back without regrets and know that I did everything I could to try to create something different than just that expectation.
Yeah. And we will screw up, and
nobody's
nobody's perfect.
We aren't trying if we don't screw up. That's what I always say.
Yeah. But this idea, I can just hear a certain cohort of my patients in my mind, what they would be kind of maybe saying to this or feeling right now. It's like, I don't even know where to start. I've been indoors now for years. I don't have any meaningful connections to even exploit to take this step. Like, what do I do? Do I join a karate class? Do I go to church? Do I start a club or join a club? I mean, there just is, and even if those are options for you, often there's a huge hurdle to going out there and trying something different than you have before. It's difficult to overcome internal resistance to making change. Why do you think that is?
It's uncomfortable. It's painful. It's different. It's scary. The fear of not knowing what's on the other side of it maybe feels bigger than the loneliness that you're currently experiencing.
Rejection, potentially.
Everything. I think that, there's probably a common set of fears. Rejection right at the top. The fear of being rejected. And you got to start with you, Who are you? And so one of the practices I built in was really daily time in the morning with God, where I just sat with my journal and I had to figure out who I was, I mean, I think you can be pushing on all levers at the same time and pick one person to start to build a deeper connection with. Maybe you pick up Brene Brown's book, The Gifts of Imperfections, and really start looking at what does it look like to show up with all my imperfections, and pick a buddy maybe. But I think really spending time to start to get in touch with that person, the spirit inside of you that you haven't been in touch with for maybe ever. Mm-hmm. And really start to understand, what is my heart saying? What's behind the loneliness,
Well, yes. And I'm glad you mentioned that. I think that when I was speaking earlier about waking up and, well, why are you waking up? And I might even put that differently and say, well, it's actually God that's waking you up.
Right.
Jostling you gently awake. And as you're opening your eyes, you're met with, this is how you shift from self-focused to others-focused, is you experience love yourself then in the midst of the pain. That it's not just pain. It's being lifted up in ways that were surprising and unexpected. And then seeing that is the ultimate good.
Right.
That's the only thing that matters. All of the things that I was going after before are ultimately letting me down and meaningless. And this is the thing that gives me life and hope. And I can see myself doing this for years into the future, where I'm giving to others in a way that's deeply satisfying and gives my whole existence purpose and meaning.
And the difference in that is when you step out the door every day, you're leaving from a place of fully loved, fully enough. You don't need anything from the day. You're just going out to be. And then all these other avenues we've created of career and service and that kind of stuff are just vehicles to go out and to be.
And then they become the icing on the cake.
Right.
You've done the work, right? You've gone through all the training, let's say, or the school, or you've been working at some job. And then imagine yourself finding yourself awake and saying, I don't hate this. This is a blessing, and it has been all along. Oh my gosh, I'm so glad that I spent all this time on this, and now I can leverage what I have
Right.
for the good of others, or the good of what God might have for my life. That's an amazing day.
Well, you're showing up as a giver instead of a taker. You're not going out into the world because you need something. You're showing up to give, and you can do that in any arena. I always think about like a hairdresser could change the world. You go and you're just dropping into everybody else, and it's just such a cool thought to think that your piece means that much. The teacher that saved the world, because you never know who's in your presence.
Right. It's like the occupation or the thing we're doing. It just becomes the scene of the play we find ourselves in. It's really about the relationship between the characters. In fact, I was listening to a podcast last night, and the psychiatrist said it's not necessarily how good of a therapist you are in any one modality of treatment. Like, am I a great cognitive therapist? Am I a great psychoanalyst? It's your ability to form a meaningful connection with your patients. That's the healing piece that unifies all therapists. So on one level, does it matter what therapist you go to, this kind or that kind? Maybe some, depending on the condition. But what really matters is, do I feel like this person hears me, cares about me, wants my best interest, is genuine in their pursuit of healing for me? Is this a real relationship? And again, that means different things to therapists than it does maybe to the patient. But there is still humanity, just like with the hairdresser. Yes, it's my client, but it's also a person. Yes, it's my patient, but it's also a person, and so am I. And the bigger reality, even bigger than the diploma on the wall and your insurance card, is I'm doing my best to care for you with the skills that I was given in this moment. And often you're also giving to me in ways that are sacred. And
what a gift that you get to care for that person in that way. Like, it's a gift to you. It's such an honor that God would put these people in your path.
And then you know what? There's not shame anymore about needing to grow and having junk on your side of the street. You see that this isn't about me being exposed and known to be incomplete or a failure in some way. This is about me growing so that I can better live out my life's calling, so that I can better give to the world around me and sort of bring God's kingdom into fullness in this life.
Raise it up.
Yeah. And then it's like, I know, Janice, we're friends too. It's like, you're having a problem. I'm having a problem. Whatever. You're not judging me. We just want to see, a good friend wants to see the other one overcome that which plagues them. They don't take pleasure in watching their friend suffer or have a setback, or watching their life fall apart, which brings a focus on how I'm better. It's I empathize, I'm concerned for you, I cry with you, and vice versa. That's what a relationship looks like that's not lonely.
I would say too, there's always problems. There's always
100%.
New growth and new garbage that you find that stinks in your yard that you didn't know about. And I'm becoming more and more leery of any relationship that has none of that. And I don't feel like those are real connected relationships anymore. And I think that, like, it's just that's normal. There should always be things that you're discovering and learning. And if we think that there's this arrival of I finally got my last piece of garbage out of my yard or whatever, like I'm scared, I'm nervous because I don't know, I don't trust you anymore, because we're never, there's no arrival. Right. There's no day where you're going to go, oh, I have arrived. Thank goodness. It's a consistent, constant, because old garbage comes back. And so those relationships is where we get to, I'm a external processor. So I need relationships to be able to talk through things and really understand all these little tensions that come up in my world. And so without those relationships, that's what's lonely. You're by yourself with nowhere to go to really dissect that stuff and to do life. I mean, that's doing life. It's not just sitting around drinking wine and talking about, or beer and talking about sports. It's so much more than that.
Yeah. It's getting in the mess with each other.
Yeah.
And that, I think that it occurred to me, church too, can be confusing in this regard. All church is not created equal. There are churches that do this well, and there are churches that do this not as well. And I think one of the ways that that modern Christianity has really kind of pushed people away is that they have projected an image of being there, of having arrived. That's often the impression that people get, is that, I'm too dirty for this place. These people all are acting like they have it together, and I don't feel safe being a flawed creature here.
Well, the church, quite honestly, should be the messiest place there is. You should be able to just get dirty. It should be messy in all areas, not because of political reasons and things, that it's normally kind of known for being messy, for the rules and the rules getting broken, but just general messiness. And I think that a church that learns how to be really good at creating a safe place to be messy.
And this is the message that I've often encountered, is that once you sign on, especially once you sign on to the dogma, where you agree with this idea that I am a saved Christian, then you're screwed. I mean, then what people tend to believe subconsciously is if they expose themselves as flawed, that they're maybe what they said they believe isn't really true about them. It puts their whole faith into question. Well, could this transformation that I've said happen to me when I took Jesus into my heart? Well, it must not really be true because I'm still struggling, right?
Right.
And all this is a misunderstanding of this concept of salvation. It's not that you don't invite God in and have a moment where maybe you reorient your life towards what you can conceive of as his purposes for you. But it's also then that this salvation thing takes on a mind of its own, and you keep working it out over time, and you're a little bit more saved in a way here on earth. I know that's going to throw the theological purists into, what do you mean more saved? You're either saved or you're not saved. It's black and white thinking.
Yep. It's not a switch, though.
It's not.
It's a process.
It's a process.
And if we think it's a switch, we go into, I'm going to save myself then, because now I have to keep this I'm saved thing going. Like, I think then we're in that hyper mode of trying to make sure that nobody sees the flaws, because then this breaks down. Then if it's a switch, it starts breaking down. Then if you believe that, then all of a sudden your flaws start showing. You're like, dang it.
Right. But am I going to heaven or hell? I really need to know that right now. Like, you can be in heaven or hell right now if you want.
Yep.
Either one.
Yep.
Do you want to choose the direction of heaven, or do you want to choose the direction of hell? And by that I mean what we were talking about earlier, that the whole sort of first half pre-crisis, second half post-crisis view. The first half is always typified by black and white thinking. I'm either in or I'm out. I'm either saved or damned. I'm either good or not good. I'm either accomplishing or I'm a failure. And then you shift into, well, that was all false dichotomy. That was all a machine that just ground me down. It's actually, I'm a loved human being, and I'm on this process of softening and embracing and growing. And if we could see a representation of our hearts, it's like they just, and when I say heart, I mean our capacity to hold the very best things that there are, the joys of life and the love that we have to give, and the capacity we have to receive that back. That can get so big if we're patient with it and we really stay in there. But it doesn't preclude pain. It does not mitigate this messiness.
Pain, I wouldn't give up the pain I've had for anything, because it was the refining that has continued and will continue to keep growing me. And I think if we're not growing, then why are we here? We're just participating in the world then. And I don't know, to me, it's really hard for me to really connect deeply with people that have no interest in growing.
Sure. I mean, and that's a sad truth, is that I'm not going to get what I'm looking for out of these relationships potentially. And there may be sometimes where we have to cut bait a little bit with certain people and try to forge new relationships. And hopefully those other folks come along. It's not that you write people off forever, but at some point there could be things that are simply holding us back. And that's sometimes hard, but it does actually hold us back. There's no doubt about it.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. And the last thing, and I want to be clear, I do think that that the key to all of this is getting the simple truth properly understood about our true nature to the divine. That what we are, is that we are created, and we are loved because we are created. We are not loved because of anything that we have done.
Mm-mm.
And that's hard. It's hard, and it is antithetical to the message of our world. Again, you're a maker of handbags and art and such, and I woodwork. I love, I made this table. I love it. I love it. Do I love it because it's holding stuff up? No. I've got 8 tables that could in the house that could do that. I love it because I see how I assembled it and how I chose to put these boards. Literally, I decided I was going to lay out each one of these and how they complemented the next one in the series and the way the grains flowed together. It's a created thing. And I, as a created thing in the image of God, am also a creator and can understand what it means to love something simply for what it is, not for what it does. And that's a super important concept in all of this. And once we have that down, once we know that the loneliness, this is the well that you drink from and you never thirst again, that quenches the loneliness once and for all, is that you could put me anywhere. I could be alone, but I'm not alone ever again. Because
you're starting from a place of 100% loved, 100% enough, like you don't need anything.
Nope. Provided for.
Totally.
The daily bread. That's what this is about. It's not just about enough food and money in the bank. It's about everything we need for our soul to sing, provided for us. And that's wealth. That's true riches. And then from that place, that well deep within that's always full, out comes this life that's then given to the world around us from a place of deep, deep love. And it really is about being all that you were made to be, as determined by your Creator, not as determined by you.
Well, and we're participating in the rising. Something's got to change. We started out this conversation about the kind of current state of affairs, and it's like it's getting worse and worse. I mean, it's starting to feel the tension is rising.
The tension is rising.
So we need to each own our part and be part of the rising.
Yeah.
And it starts with you. It's not a magic, a thing that's going to change, a rule that's going to change, a politician that's going to change. It starts with each of us.
Exactly. I totally believe that. I genuinely believe that. But please understand, yelling back at MSNBC and Fox News and writing letters to the editor about this law or that law, or screaming, back at your TV, whatever, it's just not going to do it. You just have to start right here in your own chest.
And if that thing's causing you tension, let it go.
Let it go.
My gosh, why do you keep watching it then? Like, you're just adding this toxic juice to your being. It's like, let it go.
Let it go. Let it go. I haven't watched that in a while.
I know.
My daughter seemed to, praise the Lord, grow out of that. I wonder how many Elses there are out there. How old would they be now?
Good question.
Well, thank you, Janice. I hope we can do this again soon. It's super fun to kick it around with you. And this is what we can do. We can have this conversation. We can invite anyone that wants to hear it, mull it over with us, participate. Contact at theheartacheconnoisseur.com. If you have any feedback, contact at theheartacheconnoisseur.com. You can go to the Facebook page, leave a comment. Feel free to go over to the website, theheartacheconnoisseur.com, and if you scroll down to the bottom of the page, there's a link to my Patreon account. And if you feel so moved, give a little bit. It helps us put this together, market it, get the resources in place that we need to make this grow. And you can do a little tiny bit. I mean, there's an option on there for like $1 every podcast post or something. I mean, it's not like, this is gumballs, and every little bit helps. So consider doing that. And thanks for listening, and we will see you next time.
Sounds good. Bye-bye.